How do you approach the weekend if you're the Bucks? And some very sobering numbers in terms of their standings throughout the course of the season. Camille and I dig into it coming up after this on today's Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bucks. I'm Justin Garcia, joined as always by Camille Davis. We thank you for making this your first listen of the day, each and every day, even through this, and for helping make the Locked On Network the number one sports podcast network in the industry. Today's episode of Locked On Bucks is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel giving you a way to turn that energy into an even bigger potential win with the college basketball parlay profit boost. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. You can hear me on the Bucks Radio Network every single night. The next of those is tomorrow night in a doozy with the Utah Jazz coming to town. You can hear and see Camille as part of our Locked On NBA coverage and the Technical Foul podcast as well. And you can see the rundown for today. I can't really add much to this one, Camille, but we begin things with a report from, can we call it a report, something that Stephen A. Smith said on his radio show that seems to indicate there is a current coach in the league that may not be coaching in the league next season. I think Stephen A. used even more strong words than that. But I'll just let you take this one.
Yeah, so apparently Stephen A. Smith on his radio show made mention of the fact that Doc Rivers is planning to retire after this season. And the way that came up, a listener suggested on the show that, hey, Ja Morant could really benefit for a trade out of Memphis and heading to Milwaukee and having Doc Rivers as his next coach. That should be a move that they try to make. And Stephen A. Smith just kind of interjected and said, quote, "It's not going to be Doc Rivers because Doc Rivers is going to retire at the end of the season. Doc Rivers has been coaching for close to 25 years. This is it for him. He's going to step away." So Stephen A. kind of dropped a little bomb there on his radio show, just saying like, this is going to be it for Doc Rivers. And as soon as I heard that, I said, if this is true, assuming this is true, this makes a lot of sense to me of how this season has kind of unfolded here at the end. And what I mean by that is, I called it in January. It was that Wolves game for me where like, this feels like the breaking point. Like if you're going to try to salvage your season, whatever the case may be, then a coaching change needs to happen. And then it did not happen. We got out of January, nothing happened. You get into February, that starts, and you have a little, the little 8-2 run that the Bucks had. And it felt like, okay, well, they're going to just kind of ride this out for the rest of the season. And then during this recent slump too, I've gotten over the idea that the Bucks would make a coaching change in season at this point of the year now, especially given the fact that the Bucks are kind of teetering here and play-in contention, really on the outside looking in at this point of play-in contention. So to me, the firing of a head coach right now doesn't make as much sense because it's like, well, what are we trying to do with that? Like, I remember last season when like the Nuggets fired Mike Malone, it's like a week before the playoffs start. And it's like, why do you do this right now at this particular time? And I question them. And on a Technical Foul, we had a really great conversation about it, with the conversation being like, hey, if you think you still have something to play for and this is a problem right now, then you make the change and you try to just see what you can get out of this. For the Bucks in this season with where they are, I don't think a coaching change right now is going to drastically improve their fortunes from where they are in this play-in race, because even if they were to put together a crazy run to end the season and find them their way into a play-in spot, this is not a championship contending team. So for me, hearing like, hey, the plan is for Doc Rivers to retire, I'm like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense, especially too with him having like the nomination for the Basketball Hall of Fame. Like, if this is going to be it, like, let's have him walk away with dignity. That's my assumption of what this is at this point. If that is true, that he is planning to retire, where it's like hey, we understand. We're going to let you ride off into the sunset with some form of dignity here and not have a firing on your record to end your career. So we're just going to play this out and see how it goes. So a little surprising to see that news. If it is true, I said priority number one this offseason had to be finding another coaching staff to bring in here. So it seems like we should have a new coaching staff. Again, assuming Stephen A. Smith has the proper intel on this situation.
Yeah, we'll see. All of what you said makes sense. I agree. The Hall of Fame thing was interesting too. I think you were the first one that brought that up to me, and I hadn't considered that. Of like, especially if we do know this is where we're headed, like, do we want to sully that for him? And that's the mark
Right.
that comes out, maybe. But I agree with the larger point too. Of at this point, it's probably too late for anything. The Michael Malone firing was kind of like the Griff firing, where it was, we're winning and we have a chance at something here. We believe in this group, so we got to do something to head this off. That would not be what a coaching change at this juncture would do.
Right.
And we said we're going to learn a lot this weekend. How many times have we said, well, we're going to learn a lot about this team here? And we've either not gotten an answer or you get the answer that you don't want. And then it's like, well, we'll give you one more shot here. The fact that we've had to continue to go back to that over and over, like that is your answer that we got very, very early in this season. And why not just rip the Band-Aid off now? So we were talking about what this team has done of late here in the 8 wins in 10 games that everybody keeps pointing to has now become, is it 8 wins in the last 17 games now? But we pointed to that as, Bobby called it the fool's gold for this group. And others have pointed out, well, that's what really prevented you from tanking. Like, I swear to God, Camille, if I hear one more time, just tank for the rest of the season. Like, number one, they don't need to tank if they're trying to win games.
Yeah.
And look what's happening. But also, tanking is too late. And does it come back to that 8 wins in 10 games stretch? A lot of people have said yes. I think naturally you would be inclined to say, well, if you won 80% of your games and you were in the mix with a group of teams that is not winning at that rate, yes, that's it. We went back and did the work and looked at where things were on this date and whether or not that's where it really slipped away. And what would you be looking at now if that weren't the case? So we'll get into that conversation coming up after the break here of where it all went wrong in terms of tank, if that's what your main objective is for this Bucks team, and what might have been too if they continued to play at the rate that they're currently playing at. Where would that leave them now? So we'll get into that conversation coming up after this. College basketball's nonstop. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night. From early tip-offs to late-night West Coast shootouts, there's always action on the board. And now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. You can build any college hoops parlay you want, whether it's rivalry games, ranked matchups, whatever fits your need. You can make spreads, totals, player props, match how you see the slate playing out, and then you apply the profit boost and instantly bump up the potential payout. Go safe, go bold, ride with the team you've been following all season. It's your parlay, your style, now with more upside behind it. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. All right, so when this winning streak started for the Bucks, February 3rd, and they were 18-29 going into that date. That was 12th in the Eastern Conference. At that moment, the Charlotte Hornets were 23-28. The Atlanta Hawks were 24-27. The Chicago Bulls were 24-26. That was 11-10-9. The Orlando Magic were 25-23. So you could realistically look at it and say, we're 3 games out of 9th in the Eastern Conference, despite being 11 games below 500. We're 3 games out of 9th. Hey, 5 games back of 7 and 8. Like, stranger things have happened if we can turn this thing around. And then they started to win, and it was, wow, they're really doing this. They're turning this thing around. But the Pacers, who had the worst record in the East, were 13 and 37. So on that date of February 2nd, you were 8 games in front of the Pacers in the loss column. You were 6 games in front of the Washington Wizards in the loss column, and you were 6 games in front of the Brooklyn Nets. I think it was 10 games in front of the Sacramento Kings for the worst record overall. We fast forward to today, March 6th. And as of this moment, the Bucks are now 15 games in front of the Kings in the loss column. And they are 12 games in front of the Pacers and Nets in the loss column. So you gained 5 games on the Sacramento Kings, which, look, I get it increases your odds of being in the top 4 overall, but the fact that you can't have the number 1 pick, the worst record in the league, carries less meaning to me. I'm not saying you shouldn't be closer to the bottom, but the worst record in the conference in like 2, 3, that record. Okay, let's keep an eye on that. So you went from 8 in front of the Nets and 6 in front of the Nets and the Wizards and 8 in front of the Indiana Pacers to now 12 in front of the Indiana Pacers, 12 in front of the Brooklyn Nets, and 11 in front of the Washington Wizards. So you collectively gained 5, 4, 6, and 5 on those teams. It was still going to be tough to overcome what they're doing. I don't think the Bucks would have caught them, even if you would have said, let's tank, and making up 8 games in 20, games worth. Even if you go 4 and, let's say the Bucks go 4 and 17. What does that mean you'd have to get from the Indiana Pacers? If you're 8 games in front of them, do you think the Pacers in that 21 game stretch is going to go 12 and 9?
No.
Yeah. So you weren't going to catch those teams. You probably could have gotten closer to 5th or 6th worst record had you not done that. It was still going to take an incredible amount of work, but that all but zapped any chances of you going any further down than, I still think 8 is the ceiling for this team. Ceiling, and we're using 4. It in a good sense. Yeah. Ceiling in terms of increasing your draft odds, sliding down to 8 is probably your best case scenario, because you're 26 and 35. The Bulls are 26 and 37.
Yeah.
The Grizzlies are 23 and 38. The Dallas Mavericks are 21 and 41. Boy, they almost helped you out last night. But yeah, you're already 6 in front of Dallas, 2 and 3 in front of those next 2 teams by you. Those are the realistic targets. So 8 is probably what you're looking at. If instead of going 8 and 2 in that stretch, let's say, if they were playing at their usual rate, they would have gone 4 and 6. So if we take 4 wins off of there and add 4 losses, you're 22 and 39. And then all of a sudden you are, I believe, 8th as we speak. And you're close enough that you can say we can out-tank Dallas the rest of the way. But you're still 5 games up on New Orleans, who, may make it interesting, but 5 games up on Utah, you're not catching. 7 games up on Washington, you're not catching. 8 games up on Brooklyn and Indiana, you're not catching them. And then 11 games up on Sacramento, you're not catching them. So your best case scenario through all of this is, if you hadn't gone 8 and 2, maybe you could get to 6th instead of where you are now. Right now, best case is you could probably get to 8th, but that's it.
Yeah, and it's really crazy thinking about that, and the way that they have the lottery odds too, where it's like, even if you finish with that, the 8th worst record or the 6th worst
6th
record,
odds, not the 6th.
Yeah,
pick.
like you're still not guaranteed to get that particular spot. It's just the odds there for you. And the thing that's even more crazy to me of just looking at the standings by date and seeing this Bucks team and thinking about, well,
if
how
you're
things.
going where I think you're going, it's just a doozy.
It's just like the last time this team was even in the play-in or a top 6 seed, where it's like, when you just go back and look.
We looked at it. Do you have the
I
date in
got it
front of
here.
you? The last
I
time
got
they
it.
were in the play-in, so the last time they were in 7
10
through
seed.
10.
The last time they were within that range was December 15th. When they were 11 and 16, they were the 10 seed. The last time the Bucks were not even in like the play-in conversation where they were a top 6 team in the East was November 14th when they were 8-5. They have spent most of the season in the play-in or the play-in chase. Like almost the entire month of January, they were the 11 seed in the East. Then they fell to 12 in the East for the rest of the month there. And they were starting in 12th to start off February. Then they had the winning streak here and they started stacking things together. And then by the end of that 8-2 streak, when you look at the Bucks, you're like, hey, 26-31 on February 25th. Like, hey, 11 seed, yes, but hey, we're tied in the loss column with Charlotte. We have a tiebreaker here. Like, put this potential there. Oh, also Atlanta, 29-31 to go with the Bucks being 26-31. So it's like, hey, this can be the opportunity to really make that run in the play-in. And then the losses continue to pile up. So you went from being tied in the loss column with Atlanta and Charlotte on February 25th. And as we sit here on March 6th, you are now 4 games behind Charlotte and Atlanta in the loss column. Like it's crazy. Like I know people were laughing at the cold open yesterday where we were like at a loss for words, but seriously, as you continue to dig into this information and the data and just where this team has been all season, it really does. It puts you at a loss for words.
All right. It prompted me to just look at something else right now with this group. You mentioning the last time they were in these positions. I haven't looked at, I was trying to add this up while you were talking, Camille. I haven't looked at postseason in general, but playoff. So top 6 spot. They're not getting there again this season. So we can close the book on that. We know they're not going to add any more days. Would you care to guess how many days this season the Bucks have been a playoff team? Not postseason, not in the top 10, in the top 6. How many days, calendar days this season have the Bucks been there?
I'm going to guess, because I know it goes to like mid-November. Let's say 20 days.
23 days.
Yeah, it felt like it had to be in that range.
23 days that the Bucks have been a playoff team this season. They've won 26 games. And I mean, I would venture to guess the amount of days they weren't a postseason team last year's what complicates it, but
yeah,
it may be just like you can add all of those up, the amount of days that they weren't in the top 6, the last 4 or 5 years does not match 23, or it's right at 23. Because there was a chunk of it last year with that 2-8 start and fighting and then finally getting there. So it might be 20 last year alone, but it was definitely, like 1 or 2 in each of the years prior to that. And that's just if you started the season 1-1 and everybody else was.
Yeah, and the thing that helped the Bucks last season too with that is how bad everyone else started the year off too, where it was like, yeah, we're on this slump right now, but like a lot of teams are also slumping. So the Bucks were able to kind of get themselves back into play-in contention before Thanksgiving last season, where it's like, okay, and they kind of stayed in that top 6 after Thanksgiving from that point forward. They might have waned a little bit, but they were a lot more solid than this year's group has been.
23 days. They have been in the top 6. 23 days. All right. We'll see if we can figure out the amount of days they have not been in the top 10 even. the last couple of years, I would imagine that's less than 23 for this group. So that, again, is also what's made this such a very, very hard wake-up call for all of us involved. Not just you and I talking about this daily, not just the fans that have talked about it. The organization as well has the same feelings all of us do. I can assure you of that this has been a holy cow level surprise to everyone involved with this group. So we will take a look ahead to this weekend. Like, when do you know it's time? It's like dealing with any aging and in failing health relative or close person in your life of, I think this might be it. Like, when do we know that it's officially time? We'll get into that discussion. And one thing you and I were talking about after we stopped recording yesterday about, is there any season this reminds you of? There's one that stood out to me, so I'll share mine and see if you have one coming up after this on Locked On Bucks. It's time for the 5-hour energy drafts. All 18 flavors to choose from. You got new options that are out there like confetti craze, fruity rainbow, and cotton candy. So there's always something for everyone. The board is set. The flavors are ready. And I've got my number one pick for the 5-hour energy flavor draft. It's just like Cooper Flag last year. We knew that's who was going to be the number one pick. You know by now, when you've heard me talk about 5-hour energy, what my number one pick is. And that is cherry, the smooth and easy to recognize flavor, clean, slightly tangy finish, that classic red fruit profile. But cherry's teammate, similar to Con Knipple at Duke, might be fruity rainbow, a sweet blend of assorted fruit candy flavors, multi-fruit taste profile, nostalgic candy bag flavor impression. This is just like this year's draft, though, where there are players coming out the woodwork and you're guaranteed to find a contributor, whether it's grape, berry, a personal favorite of mine. Same with pomegranate. We mentioned new flavors as well: cotton candy, confetti craze, Hawaiian breeze. So there's truly something for everyone with 5-hour energy. Find your flavor, find your number one draft pick, and go grab your bottle of 5-hour energy. They even give you flavor shots with zero sugar. They have a lot of upcoming flavor innovations planned as well. So find the new flavor of yours for 5-hour energy, available online at 5hourenergy.com or on Amazon. Workplace chaos, deadline stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on, you need the right hire. This is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed, sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for. Skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. But here's the stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Less time searching, more time interviewing those qualified candidates. It means less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And of course, you can still sign up for the Everydayer Club. You get the link to sign up for the show in the episode notes of today's show. You get ad-free episodes of Locked On Bucks and access to the Discord server as well, where you can commiserate with the rest of Bucks fans and other disappointing teams fans. Like, maybe we'll do that later on in the season of the all disappointing teams draft and where do the Bucks actually rank. We were kicking that one around too, and I felt pretty strongly like, they're not the most disappointing team in the league, at least this season. And then the more we dug into it, like
they're up
there.
but
they're up there. They're up there. So feel free to do the same with the other Everydayers when you sign up for the Everydayer Club. Again, you can find the link to do so in the show notes of today's episode. So there's one season that it's not a perfect comp, but in terms of like, what does this remind you most of? Before I give mine, have you thought of any? Do you have one?
Yeah, I was trying to think of like, does this remind me of anything? And this season has been so uniquely bad in so many different ways. With the expectation that the team had coming into the season, even though like nationally, those expectations weren't like championship contender, but at the very
Right.
least, being in the mix for a playoff spot where it's like, okay, I think the Bucks can finish top 6 in the East, maybe around that, 5, 6, 4 to 6 range, somewhere in there. But they should do that. They have Giannis, one of the best players in the league. And they're a bit younger, all the things. So when I look back and try to think of a season, I had mentioned before, like the defense for this team, this is the worst the defense has been since Giannis's rookie year. And I remember his rookie year, it was a lot of bets on that team. And the whole idea, it was the Herb Cole special of, hey, we're going to be a great 8 seed and we're going to make the playoffs. And, injuries came and kind of tanked that season. And then that's how you happen to get Jabari Parker the next year. But for me, it kind of feels like the last Jason Kidd season a little bit. But that team even still had a little bit more success. So which one was it for you that kind of was like, hey, this is feeling familiar? I'm thinking it's this season.
Yeah. So the last Jason Kidd season was the 16-17. And that was January 23rd, right? Because it's been the same date every time or within a day of each other, each time they fired a coach. So the one this reminds me of is actually the first year that I was a part of the broadcast, and that was the 15-16 season. So that was the year after 41-41, where it was, we all remember 15-67 and the low point that came there. And then Jason Kidd comes in, and then they're playing an unconventional defense, and like, this team is actually kind of fun. Wow, they're winning games, and they get to 500. And the next year, expectations were heightened for that group of, man, if Kidd did this in year one, imagine the turnaround now. They that season finished 33-49, which
the 15-16
would need 7-14 in your final 21 games, which kind of feels like what we've seen to match that record this season as well. But that year, the defense, and again, I'm not going to point out what the actual number was because it's a much, much different NBA, but their defensive rating that season was 23rd in the league. Their offensive rating was 26th in the league. This comes after we talked about, a defense that was kind of unconventional. There's a lot of people that, and rightfully so, as we've seen in the years that have passed, kind of shot holes through that defense that the Bucks were playing. I'm like, yeah, but they were 4th in defense the year prior to that. They went from 4th to 23rd. They weren't 4th last year, obviously. Offensively, they went from 25th to 26th. So they stayed pretty bad on offense, but that defense was great. It was bad the following year. And that was really the reason for it. This year, their offense has gotten worse than we imagined, but the defense is the most perplexing part of all of it because I don't know about you. I still believe they have better defensive personnel on the team this season than they did last year.
Yep.
But they've been markedly worse. And just, the fact that you didn't have heightened expectations in the sense that you knew like, wow, we're building something here. But I do think expectations were up at least for half Bucks fans of like, all right, Miles Turner, not that anyone thought Miles Turner was going to be your second leading scorer, but hey, it's a guy we called for years to replace Brook Lopez. They got him. He's younger. They're going to be able to do more things. All the things that we talked about, the 8-game sample size of Kevin Porter Jr. and smaller guards. It worked last year. It's going to work again this year for a full year. So there was, increased expectations in that sense, not to the level that anybody thought, hey, the Bucks are going to challenge and win the Eastern Conference. But to see it all go wrong and to go south so quickly, you were just kind of left with, I remember the same feeling I had at the end of that season of like, so are we just not allowed to have anything good? Like last year was just a blip and it was the outlier year. And now it's the universe reminding you of like, no, you're still the Milwaukee Bucks. So you still are going to have to suck. We let you taste 500. We let you get behind a team, 5 years prior in the fear of the deer year, but ultimately you lost in the first round. That is what you will be sentenced to for the rest of your life as a fan of this team. And I got to tell you, that's no way to go through life and just constantly assuming the worst is going to happen.
Right.
But Camille, if all you've experienced with the Bucks is the last 4 years, if that's when you came into your fandom after they won the championship, some reason, it's hard not to feel that way. And look, this one too, I was on Bart Winkler's show, a friend of mine earlier in the week, and he was talking about what if you were in a coma for a couple of years and that coincided with 2021 and you came out of the coma and I had to explain to you everything that has happened since then. You just came out now. Not only that the Bucks won the championship, but I'm telling you, oh, well, they fired Bud. Do you remember Coach Bud? Yeah. Well, they fired him, but he won a championship, but they fired him 2 years later. And then they hired another guy, but they fired him 6 months later. And then they hired Doc Rivers. And you're like, wait, Doc Rivers, the coach of the Sixers? They hired him? Well, he actually did TV and now he's coaching the Bucks too. But then, hey, did you like Damian Lillard? Because they traded for him. Oh man, so I get to watch Giannis and Damian Lillard. No, they released him and they're just paying off his salary over 4 years. He tore his Achilles too. Every single thing you'd have to go through. And even in that 2021 run too of so they got down 0-2 to the Nets. And they lost game 2 by 50 points. And we all kind of thought it was over. But then they came back and won 2 games. And oh, by the way, James Harden did something to his hamstring in game number 1. Kyrie Irving blew out his ankle in game, was that 3 or 4? One of the two. So he didn't come back. But then you win 2 in a row and you're feeling great. You played really good for 45 minutes in game 5 on the road. And then Jeff Green had the game of his life and you lose and it was doom and gloom. But then you win 2 straight games and Kevin Durant's foot was on the line that would have ended your season. But you win and then you go to the conference finals and Giannis blows out his knee. But then he comes back in a week. The roller coaster since 2021 is absolutely insane.
It's been crazy. The only thing I'll add to that is thinking about where I thought this team would be this season coming in, the things that were talked about in training camp about how this team wanted to play, what they wanted to get out here and do. And now being, at the beginning of March and seeing some of the results. And it's remember all the talk about we're going to be a fast-paced team, which I know you hear a lot of teams mention during training camp. That's a buzz one. And you hear a lot of teams say that, but the Bucks were 14th in pace last year. The actual numbers, we know that changes, but they are currently 24th in pace this year in the league. They talk so much about the defense was the 16th, going by defensive rating, was 16th last year, 26th this year, where it's I see the changes that were made and I still can't comprehend sometimes how it's this bad. And that's why a lot of times I've pointed to coaching and being I just don't think that this is the collective sum of talent here is not being shown on the court, because I still think this team is more talented than what we've seen. But this is also a team that has been through a very frustrating year. And when they get down, you can see them get down and it's oh, the game is over. I mentioned it before, the blueprint on the Bucks right now just got to be get them down and you got it. Just break their spirit a little bit. You got it. They don't really have that comeback to itness in them. So it's just been disappointing on so many different levels, the ups and downs that this has always been since the championship year, plus the thoughts of what this season could be and then seeing the results. All of it just is disappointing.
Oh no. Yeah, I mean, look, it hasn't been a great season. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that. And the organization's aware of it too. As much as I can say is the organization is aware of it. I've had conversations with a few that have enough sway in the organization that they are well aware of it. And this is they're not burying their head in the sand and blind to it. And I understand the product has not been great, and that I think the challenge, and honestly, we should save this for a different show to just look at the history of Bucks fandom. But there is a big challenge that we're all up against, not us listening to this because we're here for a reason, but that, teams like the Bucks in their spot are all up against that. Now that becomes the work in the offseason to not only improve and build this team back up, but to do the same thing with your fringe level fans, who is not really anyone listening to this show. Like, if you're seeking out the Bucks, you are a hardcore Bucks fan, but we are in the minority in this state and in this city. Even is the reality that there are two other professional sports teams that have more sway and have more fan interest. And when seasons like this happen, it's tough because momentum is real, and it is not like you're just, oh, I missed my exit on the highway, I'll get the next one, or I can just do a U-turn here. This is like a cruise ship that you're having to turn around once that starts to set in. So that becomes now the challenge for the off the court group. Whereas on the court, it's obvious of, can we keep our superstar here? Does he still want to be here? Here's the plan, and here's everything we're going to lay out and things that we can do. Like we have said many times this season, there is going to be a lot of changes this offseason, and that has nothing to do with Giannis even. Like, they have other levers they can pull, and if nothing else, like, you have to do things differently based on how this season has gone. So it is going to be an offseason of action is the way that I would term it for all parties involved. Leave your thoughts on whether or not there's a season this reminds you of, and frankly, why you continue to show up here for this.
We appreciate every one of y'all for showing up consistently, using the comments as a place to vent and just wallow with other Bucks fans and all the things. Appreciate y'all.
And as I've said many times too, like, there's less and less of you, but if you are coming to the arena, by all means, we would love to catch up and stop by and find the radio booth and say hello. That I've ran into a handful of you in the concourse and at other spots in the arena all throughout the season. I'll also give one other. How many times have you been to Fiserv? I know we're over time, Camille, but how many times have you been there this year for a game?
This year? Not that. I think twice this year.
Wow, some fan. The best spot to eat there and the best value too for your dollar is all the way up at the upper level. There's a Chucho's red taco stand, and
I love Chucho's.
It's like $13 for 2 tacos, like $14 or $15 for a burrito, which you're paying the same for Chick-fil-A basically. But we make a pilgrimage. Everybody that works in the radio broadcast, at least like with homestands like this, I'll go there 2 or 3 times in the homestand, but we're up there pretty frequently eating too. So if you ever had anything you wanted to ask Dave, that's the place to catch him and ask him too. But yes, go find that. And that would be my recommendation for places to eat in the arena. We can shift into more conversations of like, what's the best food and power ranking the food in Fiserv, because we're probably going to have a lot more time this summer to do it than we've ever had before. And we're also going to have a chance to really actually dig into and look at prospects too, which I know was a point of contention with people last summer. Well, this year's different. That we have no excuse to not dig into who are these guys, because the Bucks, assuming there's no trade, are going to have a decent draft pick at worst. So we do have a lot of different things to get into this summer that we have not gotten into before. And we're going to have a lot of time to do it as well. That'll do it for today's show. Leave your thoughts. What season this reminds you of? How you approach the weekend too. We never really got into that. And again, we may have our answer on Saturday with that game against the Jazz. So leave your thoughts on all of that. We'll address it on an upcoming show. That'll do it for today though. For Camille, I'm Justin. We'll talk with you guys once again tomorrow on Locked On Bucks.